This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Paul Welch, the recently appointed CEO at Nostra Terra Oil and Gas. Thank you very much for joining us today, Paul. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's very good. It's very good to be speaking to you. Of course, there's been some recent changes at Nostra Terra Oil and Gas. First of all, can I just ask you, what has sort of led to these changes, both at board level and, of course, the project focus, which we'll talk about in a moment?
Yeah, so I think, the company had gone in a certain direction for quite some time. And then the board decided that, okay, I think we need to look at other ways of doing things because the share price was lagging and revenues were down. So we just thought, okay, let's do a fundamental, understanding of where we're making our money, how it's being generated, where the best assets are, and how we can get a better return for the cash that we're putting into the business. And so that led to some of the changes you've seen. So, firstly, we're focusing on our main asset, which is the Pine Mills asset in East Texas, right? So we're about 100 barrel a day, AIM listed, Texas onshore focused, conventional oil thing. So we look for, stable oil production, low declines that will be there for a while. Mm-hmm. Our primary asset was discovered in 1949, right? So it's a large field discovered in 1949 that we still see a lot of potential in, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we have other assets in the Permian and in South Texas. So again, we're Texas focused onshore. And we recognize that on a return basis, the West Texas and the South Texas assets weren't as good as our asset in East Texas, which was Pine Mills. And so we started a program to essentially divest. So the Permian assets, we had two. One has already been sold. The second's in an auction process. And the South Texas assets, as we put in the presentation out on the website a couple days ago, we're discussing that, selling it with a particular buyer at the moment. And if that doesn't work, then we'll put it in an auction process. So At the end of the summer, let's say, we're going to be focused essentially 100% on our primary asset in East Texas, which is called the Pine Mills field. And again, that's where we see the best way to generate revenue going forward.
Okay. And if you can talk a little bit about yourself as well, your history. It's the first time we're speaking in your capacity at Nostra Terra, but also the first time we're speaking completely. It's the first time we've met today. So we can learn a little bit about you, what your expertise is, and some of a bit of your past career, and also why you joined the board, why you like the opportunity here at Nostra Terra.
Okay, well, a lot of questions there, so we're going to take them one at a time. So my background is I'm a petroleum engineer background. I went to school in the U.S., University of Texas, the Colorado School of Mines. So I have a BS, MS petroleum engineering. I worked for Shell for a long time, and then I left, got an MBA, and started to work for smaller and smaller companies. So I worked for Honeywell Company, I worked for Pioneer Natural Resources, and then I was the CEO of two AIM-listed companies prior to this. One is called Chariot, the first one, and the second one's SDX. Okay. So I left SDX in 2019 and formed another company called ACP, which is main board listed. And then someone asked me to come on the board of NTOG about 2 years ago because, again, this whole idea of let's see what we can do. Should we? How can we improve this? And so that's where it started. So what I like about the opportunity at NTOG and why I came there is that it's onshore Texas. The fiscal terms are great. It's stable. The oil prices are good. Your operating costs are low because we're in a shallow, kind of relatively shallow thing. You have lots of services available. So compared to other parts of the planet where I'd worked for Shell and others, it's relatively easy to do business. And if the oil prices are reasonable, it's a really great place to make money. Taxes are low. Governments are stable as governments can be. So that's the opportunity, I saw there. And then with the Pine Mills asset in particular, again, because it was an older asset that's now covered completely in 3D, modern 3D, because it's so large and wells were drilled ages ago. So a well that was drilled in, say, 1970, that came in at 100 barrels a day or 60 barrels a day, and the oil price was, $3-4 a barrel. It's like, we're not interested. We can't make money at that or something. Whereas today, that same well would be fantastic. So in this field, just 2 years ago, the average well in the field is making about 10 barrels a day. We drilled a fault block off the main area called the Falk area and drilled two wells that came in at original reservoir conditions, producing 120 barrels a day. right? Each. So that's 240 barrels a day of oil from, an area that had nothing before it. And again, this was discovered 80 years after the original discovery of the field was made. So now that the whole thing is covered in 3D seismic, we're out looking for other fault analogs. And if you look at the presentation we put on the website, we have another well that we can think is called the Fault 3 that we can drill that will be, we expect, similar to what we've seen in the Fault 1 and 2. So it's those type of opportunities that we see in Pine Mills, one, that attracted me. And then secondly, you have a number of idle wells in the Pine Mills field. So like I said, the average well is making 10 barrels a day. We have more than a dozen wells that are idle, and we're going through a process now of returning a number of those wells to production. So we've identified 9 that we think we can return to production relatively cheaply. And those 9 wells, we think, can deliver something on the order of 85 barrels a day. So the field itself presently, just by itself, is making 70. If we can add another 85, we've doubled the production, and our costs don't change because all the facilities are there, the people are there, the G&A is there. And so we don't have to increase that. So that revenue falls straight to the bottom line. And so those are the type of opportunities that we see in the field. And secondarily, the reason that we added the new board member, which I think we're probably going to come to in a minute, Mr. Newman, is that Jim Newman has spent his entire career working in Texas, in the Permian and East Texas, other parts of Texas, focused on mature wellbores, mature fields, and how to wring the most oil out of them in a very cost-effective manner. So he's been primarily on the services side of the business, so he knows what things cost, how you can do things cheaply, how you can return things to production and not spend a huge amount of money. And so between his expertise, our new focus, we think we can really start generating revenue in this area that hadn't been done in the past. So that was the opportunity set. And hopefully in the near term here, again, returning wells to production is a 1 to 2 week kind of type of thing. And so once you get that program started, the increase in production can be relatively quick. And so that's kind of what we're focused on. And that's where we saw the opportunity rather than, spreading out the footprint and growing the business kind of in a more geographic sense, right?
Yeah. Okay. So all those West Texas assets, then you're eliminating them. They're no longer, a focus. It's all about Pine Mills here. And the overarching theme really is to get, you are revenue generating, but to ramp that up, to focus on
that's the key. We
revenue
really need
generating assets.
Exactly. We really need to increase that revenue stream. That's what we're focused on because that's what the shareholders want. Like, we need to generate money from this business. I mean, that's why we're in it. And so by focusing, reducing our costs, we've cut the G&A substantially. By eliminating other geographic areas, we've, cut staff, cut costs, reduce it as much as possible. Jim, the guy that's coming on the board, is taking basically no salary. He's just representing his fund. So, we're really focused on, eliminating unnecessary costs, and spending the money in an area that can return, have a significant return. So when we look at returning these wells to production, the IRRs on not drilling it with new well, just essentially changing out a pumping unit, putting it back on production, making 8 to 10 barrels a day. Sure. They're extraordinarily high, above 100%. So those are the type of things we're focused on, and that was the opportunity set that I think got me excited. And Jim Newman, who's coming in, he's an 11% shareholder. He bought into the concept, so he's really committed. So we're really excited that he's on the board.
Okay. So in terms of the focus of operations, and you've got the circa 10 idle wells you want to turn back into production. Currently, you're doing 70 barrels a day, wanting to increase that by around 85, I think you said. And then you've also got another work stream, I guess, which is reviewing that 3D seismic and looking for new locations to drill for new wells. That's
correct. Yeah, and that's down. Again, we want to generate our own cash to kind of use to put back into the business, but. The area is covered in 3D, and so there's been a technical team working on looking for new fault analogs or extending the ones that we have. As you can see on the website, we've shown one. We think there's at least a couple others. But the interesting thing about the Pine Mills field is that you have 4 productive horizons, all of which are very good quality. And so the main field is produced from a reservoir called the Sub-Clarksville. But then you have, 3 others beyond that all have the same type of potential because in the old days when wells were drilled, you didn't want to get too close to a bounding fault. And so the wells were backed off a bit. Now, because you have very good quality seismic, you can precisely put the well where you want it. There's a lot of attic oil left close to the faults. And so a lot of that we're going to go target because we think we can see it better. We have the tools to understand it better, and we have the facilities that we can produce into. So again, all these barrels that flow through are essentially just almost straight to the bottom line. The incremental cost to turn a new well on is close to the process is close to zero. So it's really a great way to generate revenue from existing assets.
Well, it sounds like you've got a plan to get active on the ground there. I mean, are you able to share, have you got any internal targets that you can talk about in terms of the next 6 months, perhaps how many barrels you'd like to be producing or how much revenue you'd like to see coming through?
Well, let's talk about barrels because revenue is a challenge given no one knows what the oil price is. Unless you do, if you can tell me, then I'll gladly take your advice. But I think from a target perspective, what we'd like to do is essentially double our production in Pine Mills. That's the target, right? So returning all these idle wells to production, we're taking the Pine Mills field at the moment, it makes 70. The overall company is making close to 100. But generating another 80, 85 barrels from just returning the wells to production, and then having, one or two, Falk-like successes. That's what we'd like to do in, say, the next 6 months. And then the revenue will cascade from that. So, if we are successful, then, doubling their production will more than double the revenue, assuming no change in oil price, because our costs won't increase, hardly at all. So it'll be a relatively pretty impressive increase in revenue stream if we can pull it off. And we think we can. We've studied it. We've really dug into the well files, looked at what's available, what needs to be done. And some things are really expensive. Like we can turn one well to production that we're aware of for, as little as $15,000, right? And so, it's those type of things that we think we can do in the near term that will really, drive that revenue stream. And that's what we're focused on. Okay.
Well, you're talking a good game, Paul. And I guess the existing shareholders, I know you have a few large ones on the books, are backing you with this.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they're excited. So we have one primary shareholder. I won't give their name out, but they really like anything that pays out in under a year. And so our 9-well program all pays out in under a year. So I think the shareholders will like that. Our biggest shareholder is Jim Newman, who's coming on the board. He bought in. He likes the concept. So I think we're very well aligned with our shareholder base, our large shareholder base, and but we want everyone to participate because it's been the share price has not really done much, and we really want to focus on that, make sure everyone is going to be successful as we think we can be. And so moving forward, again, the idea is just let's push hard, let's generate revenue, and then once we have essentially maximize what we call Pine Mills, then we'll start looking around for potentially other opportunities. But for the moment, we're just going to be kind of focused on what we've got.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Paul Welch, the CEO of Nostra Terra Oil and Gas, for your time. Looking forward to following this story with the regular updates.
Yes, I really look forward to speaking to you again. Let's think about 3-4 months from now, and we can talk about what's worked and what hasn't. But we think we're going to be very successful between now and then.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.